Hi, I'm Janice Switlo. I have a number of middle names, initials G, A, and E. The initial E stands for Eleanor, and I just was wanting to quote Eleanor Roosevelt, where she said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." And I'm going to enter into a bit of a brief discussion today on some commentary by a doctor of clinical psychology and behavioral medicine, and doing so to explain, or help explain at least, the dynamics that continue in terms of negotiations that occur within Canada with Indigenous nationals. And it says, you may, and I'm actually speaking towards the behavior, if you will, of Indigenous nationals and how well it's understood and taken advantage of by Canada. It says, you may complain or cry or threaten to give them negative results, but if the bottom line is that you reward the behavior by providing a response that the other person values, for example, that Canada values, then that person decides, Canada, hey, this works. I now know how to get what I want. Now, Canada wants your land. Canada wants your water. Canada wants to make lawful, retroactively, a lot of unlawful taking of your land and taking up and using it, and in some cases destroying your land. You know, it's a trite thing to say that your tenant, in renting from you, cannot destroy your property. It's a matter of usage. And if there is to be a wholesale destruction, for example, an open pit mine, then that's something that goes beyond the normal usage expectation in terms of the arrangement. And so too the treaties guide the usage and provide for the Crown and Her Majesty's governments and, for example, Crown corporations, being agencies and all part and parcel of that, they can do things. There is no permissions granted to third parties, and there is no proviso that what the Crown and her agents can do can be assigned to any third parties. There's nothing like that in the treaties. Those wanting to do such things will need to go directly to the Indigenous nationals and their nations and negotiations with them directly. This goes well beyond the Section 35 doctrine of consultation and accommodation. And so this doctor continues that whoever your relationship partners may be, and again, consider Indigenous nation and the Crown acting through, since the delegation of self-government to Canada, acting through the Crown, acting through her Canadian Privy Council representatives. Well, whoever your relationship partners may be, you have taught them the rules and you have taught them the boundaries of the relationship. They have learned your response patterns and incorporated them into their actions. You teach people what they can get away with and what they cannot. You teach them by either actively rewarding their destructive relationship behavior or by passively allowing them to persist in that behavior. Now, appreciate the whole dynamic of the residential school experience and 60 Scoop is to control the ability for Indigenous nationals to actually stand up for themselves. They've been so indoctrinated, the buttons have been put in place to be easily pushed to gain control and to keep things passive and keep allowing Canada to conduct itself as an unlawful nation. It's no wonder that the same thing keeps happening, because it's working. The same basic program with a new shade of lipstick on it is promoted and money is paid and things carry on. Whenever there's a blip, you know, where people, Indigenous nationals, will stand up and say, no, this isn't the way you should do things, they either wait until people fade and forget and give up, or they bump up the control over those they have deemed to be decision makers for the Indigenous nationals. Now, of course, none of that is lawful, but this is how it's conducted. So, bottom line, you want to change things up, you want to get the nation-to-nation relationship back on track, then you got to stop doing what you've been doing. You've got to stop rewarding Canada and the provinces by showing them that you are indeed going to fall in line. This is before you reopen, the doctor writes, before you reopen the negotiation regarding your particular relationship, you must commit to do so from a position of strength and power, not fear and self-doubt. Now that's why people say, well, what's so unusual about Switlo's approach? Well, I come at things from a position of power. That power is supported by facts and truth and the realities of the legal relationships between the Indigenous nations and the Crown via treaty. And this doctor concludes, the worst thing you could do is make a lot of noise about changing things, only to revert to the old, familiar, destructive patterns. I'm not pointing a finger of blame here. This is the reality. Indigenous nationals have been manipulated, indoctrinated, controlled, oppressed, abused, anything that's been possible to try to undermine their power, undermine their strength, undermine their belief in their nations and themselves. And that's all I have to say.